Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do the introduction, Jonathan. Welcome to Jonathan Demere's channel.
Welcome.
I just told him to press record and we can talk about his clips. So I'm going to alleviate him from the pain of all that. But that's one of the things that really sparked my interest in having conversations with you was watching your clips because I really liked what you were seeing in the different conversations. And sometimes you would like clip a whole bunch of stuff together so it seemed like a cohesive conversation, but it was from like different timelines, even within the same video, which I think is so maybe what do I want to ask you about that?
One quick thing about that is that I usually try and keep them in chronological order. Like the cuts. Like
Yeah,
sometimes I will rearrange things, but I think there's something about like the natural flow of things.
true.
How I'm just a lot of times I just think I'm trying to again, I have to be careful not to get fool myself here, but I'm usually just trying to pull out the thread, like at least the thread that I perceive, like the parts that shine, and like
That's what I wanted to ask you. Yeah.
I need to not I could talk about this so much just because I love it.
Yeah, well and okay, so here's what I think about that. People often say to me, I don't know what to do with myself. What should I do with my life? And I say, what do you love? Because God says he will give us the desires of our heart, right? So it's like, well, which is a nice little tricky verse because it is, I think, actually, that he gives us the love for something and then he gives us it, right? So if you have a love for something, you should be doing it, in
Yeah.
my opinion, you
Yeah.
know?
Like that's, I just um yeah, something about it feels like I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing, like when I'm doing
Right.
it. Um But also, it's not just that. I think I was saying I have to be careful because I love it, but it's also just, I, I'm not great with like the people praising the stuff that I do. Like people always say thank,
Okay, well, let's talk about it from in the third person then.
people always say,
Jeremy, Jeremy this morning in the live stream was talking about editing and how the editor is so important in film, right? And then I put in a comment in the comments or in the chat, I said I think that's what Chad the alcoholic is. He's an editor, right? So he clips stuff and puts them together and draws your attention towards the thing that he's seeing, right?
Mhm.
Jeremy used the example of the movie Jaws because I guess the machine that the shark wasn't working properly throughout the whole filming process. And so the editor actually had to was the person who made the movie, otherwise it would have looked terrible. And I guess she actually won like an Academy Award for editing for that movie because she did such a good job. And and then Jeremy wrote in the chat in response to what I wrote, he said he thought Paul Vanderklay was doing that too, going over other videos, right? Was doing that editing kind of work.
Mhm.
And so, and there's a lot of people that are doing that in this little corner of the internet, actually,
Yeah,
including yourself.
Chris would call them lobster monkeys or reapers.
Right. Yeah, yeah. See, I'm not that familiar with all of
Good.
Grimm's language. But yeah, that's true. So I find that really interesting because it seems like there's not only a gift, some people have the gift of doing that, but there seems to be a need for it because our attention we can be so distracted somehow, right? That we need people to draw our attention to the more important things. And I think that's what you're doing. I think that's what Chad's doing. And I don't know if PBK is doing that. But Jeremy sees him doing that
I think
too.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I'm flattered and I'm glad that you enjoy it. And um, I'm reminded of this idea of relevance realization, because it's kind of like, figuring out what's relevant and sorting the information and stuff, because that was a lot of a big part of it of making the clips was also just for like organizational and memory purposes, like
Yeah.
that I could reference the things, and also the process of making it helps me remember it a lot. And
Yeah, me too, actually. Like I've actually gone back over some of my thoughts in your clips because I watched them and I'm like, oh, and I was able to retrieve them again in that conversation with Jed, for example, because because I had watched your clips, right? Because I
I'm
mean,
glad. I'm very glad. Yeah.
I have no clue what I've said over the years on,
I
you
was talking
know,
about,
I
I'm
only hope that it's coherent.
I think so. Maybe not in this like you know, concise way
Perfect way.
mm,
Hmm.
or mosaic way. Um
Hmm.
uh yeah, I'm reminded of I was talking with Matt, Mr. Matt McMosive. Um should we call him we have to find like three more M's. Minister, Meister, Matt, Meister. Anyway,
Meister Matt McMoses.
yeah. And
Sounds good.
I was talking with him about this he mentioned that how he never like really remembers all the stuff that he says, and he complimented me on always remembering like past things, which I don't know if I actually do that, but I appreciate the compliment. And and we were talking about it a bit, and I was reminded of how um Jordan Peterson says that, that's one reason not to lie. It's because when you lie, you have to remember everything he said. Um,
Oh, I learned that at a very young age. I did. I lied at a very young age and then realized that in order to escape punishment, I would have to lie again.
and you see the mountain build before
And
you.
then yeah, and then I saw it just kind of mushroom clouding, right? And then I was like, I'll never remember this. So I just told the truth. And then I got the belt, like I got a spanking. But I remember feeling like super free because I didn't have to remember all my lies. And that was pretty much it for me. After that, I was just like straight up.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's one thing. And then, but thinking kind of on a different angle is that like I think there's something to be said for like deliberately, of course, like I think there's something about self-forgetting and self-remembering, like this coincidence of the opposites of like giving everything up to kind of I think Matt analogized of how like you can let Christ become one of your senses almost, where it's like you're Jesus take the wheel type of thing, remember what needs to be remembered. But then I also think there's something about this kind of deliberate, intentional relationship with the events that happen in our lives, and like whether it be note taking or whatever. And the word that we came to that I've been thinking about is thread keeping, like to keep to go back and remember the things and uh you know set aside or like just I guess kind of write down in a sense, like the things that so that you
You
can.
know,
Yeah.
there's actually I mean the Philokalia, which is a collection of sayings from elders. And then there's also a Philokalia of Origin written by Gregory of Nyssa and his brother Saint Basil the Great of and these are basically they were clipping, if you think about it. Because and it's a good thing they did it because what ended up happening was when Origin was anathemized 300 years later, all of his works were burnt.
Yeah.
And there's very little left of his body of work. And but one of them, because Gregor of Nyssa and Saint Basil made it, remained intact.
Yeah, I have a little hard drive with most of my videos here, in case the internet goes down, but or,
Perfect.
I don't know if that'll survive a solar flare or not, if that were to happen. Um, But yeah, that's an interesting connection there. Like,
Yeah,
is and then thinking one thing about this idea of thread keeping is I think part of the reason why I think it might be like an important thing to maybe consider as like a I don't know if I want to go so far as to say like a practice, but just like a habit of like writing down the key points in your mind after a conversation or something, like I really think we lose so many things, like you were saying,
we do.
we just kind of move on and I ultimately think that there's kind of this fundamental thread, and
Yes.
like the threads that we have all kind of are variations and they get closer and further away from it. So that
Hmm.
this process of recollecting the threads, kind of spinning a thread together,
Hmm.
as you know. But yeah.
Well, this might sound strange and and whatever, let the chips fall where they may, but I'll often download a conversation that I've had right after I've had it for when I'm traveling in the car or whatever, because I don't have Wi-Fi, I don't have a phone, right? So I have to download it.
Like the meta
Listen,
yeah.
listen in my car because I'm looking for the thread.
Mhm.
Because when you're in the conversation, there's often not, you're not necessarily, unless you are having a very formal conversation, right? Which most of these here are not.
Yeah.
And um and I'm looking for the thread and I'm looking at how I'm pulling at the thread and how others are pulling at the thread,
Mm.
because it helps me because I like to go, okay, well, maybe I should have pulled from this angle, or maybe what if we all went this direction and tried over here? And it just gives me an opportunity to think about what is being said in a fresh way because I really love to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean just this kind of self-reflection is probably good in general, like and it's really wild to think about now that I think about it, just the fact that we can kind of sit there and look at ourselves like doing things beyond us. Um, like that is completely evolutionary out of the ordinary, like the fact that we can watch ourselves speak for an hour and be like, wow, look at what I'm doing there. Like kind of wow.
And, oftentimes I feel in a conversation, I feel like I'm not, like the conversation's kind of haphazard and it's going all over the place while I'm having it. But then when I listen back, I'm like, oh no, I didn't do that at all. You
Yeah.
know, we were actually saying something.
A lot of times I'll
And
watch.
sometimes, and I don't actually, I don't know how it is for you, but I don't always know what it is and what I'm trying to say. And I can decipher that out by listening again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times I don't know, I'm just thinking about all the hours that I spent like watching both myself and others speak kind of with this not necessarily critical eye, but like creative eye or something or looking for the thread eye, you know.
Mhm.
It's really been an interesting thing. Like it's kind of weird for because the thread is it's like it's like when I think there's kind of an association between like your personal knowing and who you are as an individual. It's like when you are truly speaking your mind, that's when you shine through or
Yeah,
something. So it's
yeah,
like when I'm constantly looking for those moments, it's like I it of course it's not like this true deep communion of like connection with the person, speaking with them face to face or even in a video call like this or something, But I get this sense of like I like I've spent so many hours listening to you. I feel like I have a semblance of like who you are already, in
yeah.
some or I don't know what
And
words
I
to use.
think that's true. Like, okay, so let's just think about it in terms of before this, people had to write it down, like Plato writing Socrates' dialogues. It had to be written down and then it was read. And I mean, when you're reading, you don't even have intonation, you don't have body language, you have nothing. You know, if you're a bad reader, then Lord have mercy, that's all I could say.
I
But,
think radical transformation like this, what we're doing now, and everybody knows that, but I
yeah,
really think it's noteworthy, like more so than most people think. And I wonder almost if it's so significant that it's maybe like the actual Luke talks about Gutenberg 2.0, and how the medium of the printed word totally changed everything, you know, and
Mhm.
like I think I don't know, I think there's already this movement happening towards original participation or whatever, you know, like a less propositional way of being. But I think that the move away from printed media and towards visual media is such a powerful thing. And even audio stuff, you know,
Audio.
has been around, but even that, you know, it's like yeah, it's like I think that maybe it's kind of shifting people's consciousness, you know, like we talk about the mode of consciousness, the evolution of consciousness,
Mhm.
such that like when all these people are watching all these videos all the time, it kind of changes them from like the internal voice to like the participatory mode or something. I don't know. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I actually think it's a move back towards an oral tradition.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Excited about it, man. I'm
I
like
am
on the
too.
hype
I
because
am
you
too.
know, I those moments of beauty when we're like together and
Mhm.
you know, it's just
Talking.
what it's all about, you know. So I think we're going in the right direction. We might have to go through some kind of U-shaped stuff first, but yeah,
Well, the U shape might have been Gutenberg, like text, just looking at text and trying to decipher it with our own voices without hearing the voice of the other person, you know. And I mean, there's nothing like hearing a poet read his own poem,
for sure.
you know. You can read a poem, read a poem, read a poem, and then you find it on the internet read by the poet, and it's just not even the same poem.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
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 So now we're actually saying what we think in our own voices, and we have visual aid.
Yeah, re-spirited breath.
Yeah.
And I think it's wondrous. And it's
Yeah,
so
it is.
great that people have been talking about this, you know, because I was kind of struck by like the way that there is this modal shift that is available to us. And I saw that that's the way things are going and that it could be beautiful. And I was like, why isn't like I'm completely
Why
alone.
isn't it?
Nobody else sees this, you know, so it's wonderful,
Well,
man.
you're in good company because I was having the same problems.
Yeah,
Everyone was like, this is terrible. We're staring at screens. And, that's why, like, even in the live stream today, people were talking about vices, personality disorders, and vices. And I said, yeah, but what about your strengths? Like, there's two sides to this story, right? And if you focus in on the negative things, then what does Martin Shaw say? You make things holy by the kind of attention you give to them, right? So why don't we give the attention to the positive aspects because there's always a positive aspect to everything that we're doing and experiencing.
yeah, I resonated with that. Somebody also said like that what Jesus, I think it was Mike Sartori said that, you know,
Jesus telling that parable of the prodigal son, and there's like so many references to specific, like the lines that he's saying are like exact quotes from specific stories in Genesis. And basically, it's like the Pharisees are saying, "Why are you, spending all this time with sinners?" And then he basically just tells that story, and it's like an edit of the whole book of Genesis, where he highlights basically all the redemptive elements that they had ignored in favor of, maybe the more punitive aspects of what happens. And, that's, yeah, so it's definitely that, um, that ability of, it's the salience landscape thing, you can, yeah, and we can do it with our own life. How you choose to look at your own past and you know I think because the thing with the 20 hindsight being 2020.
saying, you know, look at all the redemptive aspects of this that you were totally missing, you know?
Mhm.
And that's the same thing. Yeah, I was kind of berating as I tend to do. I I think that like this modal shift that is maybe happening because of the media is more of like a subtle thing that's happening. Um and I am ultimately kind of wary of these things, you know, like uh,
Well,
like
with good
it's
with
kind of
good reason.
berating against it. I I lost my train of thought now because
I'm sorry.
No, not because of you, just because this is, and I don't want to give the wrong impression. Like, I think I agree that, we have to focus on the good aspects of this, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's a but or an and, that I just think we should also, or perhaps like, we should also really remember that, in my opinion, that these things are trying to like, uh, completely suck us in and be, we don't want to be doing this all the time. Like everybody likes to talk about how great TLC is and how great these conversations are. But in my opinion, the fact that like people aren't seeking these friends in person kind of gets swept under the rug. And like the fact that we're spending all these hours doing this as opposed
Mhm.
to, being in our local communities or something, you know?
But I mean, I think there's been a real big push, especially by Paul Vanderglade, for people to get into community, and people have taken those steps.
Yeah. And I
Like,
just think it's about the proportionality. Like we just have to
yeah, yeah,
have,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. And
totally.
uh, uh, Cassidy put it beautifully, I thought today. I was actually just editing that whole live
Oh,
stream
cool.
before we talked. And she
I
said,
didn't see the first part, so yeah.
we're gonna love it. I suggest you watch the whole thing, but if you don't have time, I'll be posting a clip about it tomorrow. Um,
Hmm.
and she put it beautifully, I thought. She said something about crowning the digital with the in-person.
There's something about taking the online participation and grounding it in the in-person that I'm very interested in.
I just really like
Yeah,
it.
totally. Yeah, I can't wait. Like we're doing a conference in Olympia in September, Grail Country.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I was kind of bummed though because it's very far away. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If there's
Yeah,
one,
and I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know who's going to be there, but I don't care. I'm just
yeah, I'm so excited for you. That's gonna be awesome.
excited. Yeah.
That reminds me also, when Nate was commenting, uh, say I think I want to talk to Nate about eurythmy because I didn't realize that he kind of is keen to
Understood.
that. Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
excited
I
to.
don't know much about that.
Hmm.
Maybe you can explain it to me.
Oh boy. Wait. Well, as I understand it, it involves so Steiner's terminology. The first thing that I'll say is that I have been raving about. This is not self-promotion. I'm just kind of as context, like for why I'm so interested in this is that like I was talking about the nonverbal symbols, like the symbol,
Yeah.
the commun, the just the nonverbal language and gesture and stuff like that being important, finding this balance. And then I found that he had talked all about it, and he was like, "This is the fruit of anthroposophy. This is the jewel of our whole thing that we're doing." And I was like, "Oh my God!" um, and
That was Steiner, you mean?
yeah, Steiner was. But anyway, aside from my vain context, it has to do with, as I understand it, his description of it has to do with like the different levels. He has like the physical body, the etheric body, the astral body, and the ego, and the I, spirit self, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and again, this is the way that he thinks about it, or he thought about it. And where when we speak, the larynx is making gestures, and it's also perceiving like something about uh, the etheric, and it's transforming it into the vibrations of the air,
Hmm.
right, when we speak.
Yeah.
He says the larynx is doing kind of eurythmy, and it's putting the etheric into the vibrations of the air, so that the air is like an image. But he said that there's also a way of making it such that not only the air is an image of the etheric body, but the whole body, such that, so the whole body becomes an organ of speech, essentially, like that
Hmm.
people can speak with each other. Um, and again, it's important to distinguish. I think the way that he thought about it is that, he's not trying to get rid of like spoken words, languages. Uh,
No,
yeah,
but he's just kind of highlighting how the the body participates in the expression of the mind. Is
yeah,
that what is that what it
neuro.
is?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of simplifying it, I think just like it's basically the idea that like the soul or the spirit can shine through one's whole body in
Yeah. Mhm.
in not just like a it's not just like a passive dancing way, and it's also not just like it's not like a it's not like a thumbs up or like a salute or something. It's like
No.
this um it's something some sort of balance where um it's like naturally speaking, you know, like when somebody's talking, I think, and this is the thing, is that he kind of talked about eurythmy in a bit of a more rigorous way, like speaking about particular gestures corresponding to particular letters or sounds or something.
Okay.
But at the same time, he also talked about how this was important at an evolutionary scale and that it would eurythmy would become something beyond what he was talking about. And he talking about how it, you know, it's an evolutionary impulse in humanity, this transformation of this moving into I don't know if you would say like a eurythmic mode or something, but basically the idea is that I think we're doing eurythmy all the time. I don't think it's something, I do think it's something that you can kind of get better at. And I do think people actually can use it for evil, like news broadcasters, be alarmed, you must be alarmed. And um
Casting spells, right? In a way.
yeah, yeah, but I think yeah, like the whole idea of like the white magic is that we can kind of get better at becoming transparent to who we really are.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Who we really, really are.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of yeah, it was to me it was a great surprise because it just lines up with everything I was kind
Yeah,
of
it's like, like when I just said that, it was something Douglas Harding says, right? And when he says that, it's like he knows something deep down inside of himself. Like he really shines when he says that,
mm, yeah.
or busted wide open.
Yeah.
When he uses those two little phrases that are really belong to him,
Mhm.
it's like
Yeah.
something about him is transfigured. You know what I mean? Like it just really comes out. And I'm just thinking about the seraph, with, it's just represented as wings with eyes,
Mm,
right? So it's like, I wonder if Steiner talks about the seraph in connection to eurythmy,
mm,
because that would be interesting.
For us, the seraphim, cherubim, and thrones represent the highest hierarchy among divine beings. These beings come into the closest vicinity of the most exalted divinity we can speak of, the threefold divine power, or the Trinity. We must therefore picture the Godhead as beyond the seraphim. In John the Baptist it was the angel, the being, the rank immediately above man, who spoke. In Christ it was the exousiai, who, as I have said, speak through events of nature. It was their forces in the body of Christ which enabled him to teach, quote, with authority.
I'm
yeah.
gonna have to look into it more. I know you've made a few videos and I haven't really watched them, so I'll have to look.
Sure. Yeah.
Usually what ends up happening is I'll watch your clip and then I end up going to the conversation or the whatever, the full thing, and then
Cool. Yeah. No, that's cool to hear. Yeah.
watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'm always glad that you include that, actually.
Yeah. I try
Yeah.
to, they just made it so that the external links, like when I put the link to the song, they made it so you can't click it unless I do some sort of verification where I take a picture of myself or like show them my license or something. I'm just like, I'm just gonna not put the link, you know? Honestly, come on.
Mm. No, but for the video that you clip, you put the links, and that's great because then I can actually watch them.
Yeah, I just posted one about eurythmy today.
Mm.
One of my favorites. Because it was my first time where I always kind of got the inkling that he connected this to like the evolutionary process, but it was only kind of sparse places where he mentioned it. But this one, like he really went into how like you know, like it's connected in that way. He kind of thought about it where like the etheric body is being like brutalized or like assaulted by our modern mode of schooling, like the way kids are doing things at the wrong
Right.
ages, and like we're doing things with our body that are just like
Yeah.
unhuman. And he says that we have to counterbalance this with eurythmy, and that's kind of
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
that
Well, like my kids didn't
an
go to a wall.
evolutionary, and he connected it as evolutionary, and that's so the one, and I heard that one last night, so that was kind of exciting to hear.
Yeah. My kids didn't go to a Waldorf school, but they went to Montessori. And well, I mean, my oldest daughter was there for 5 years. And they never did sitting in desks or anything. I mean, they did, they had them, but the kids could choose how they wanted to, like so their school day, the teacher was a guide. That's how she was described to the children. And
Interesting.
so they would go see her and she would say, okay, these are the things you have to do today. Do you need any help deciding in what order you'd like to do those things? And the kids could say yes or no.
Hmm.
And then she would say, okay, well, if they said yes, then she'd say, well, maybe, you know, why don't you do the story first and then you can do your math second or whatever. If they said no, they didn't need help, then she didn't give them any. The only thing that they had to do was finish the plan, like have that work for the day done by the end of the day. And then off they'd go. And they had like cubby holes where they could crawl in and lay on their tummies and work on their thing, or they had a kitchen in the school and they could sit in the kitchen if they wanted to. They could sit at a desk. They could do whatever.
Yeah,
I
cool.
mean,
Yeah, pretty sure uh I'm pretty sure Paul Vanderklay's wife is a Waldorf
mhm.
teacher. And of
She's a
course,
Waldorf.
yeah, and of course, as you know, Michael Martin has a
Yeah,
story
he's
to
gonna
play with yeah.
Yeah, he'd actually be really somebody to talk to about eurythmy, actually. He probably knows a lot about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, honestly, I bet
And he's
it's
super accessible too.
oh, yeah,
Like if you just go on his sociological studies website
kind of
and
intimidating.
email him there, he would love to talk to you, I'm sure of it.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I'm kind of intimidated because I really look up to him, but if he's anything, as welcoming and gracious as you,
He is.
that'd be great as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, cool. Yeah, no, it'd be
And I
cool.
would love to watch that conversation actually.
Maybe like I don't know if this is presumptuous of me, but to talk with like you, I don't know, that might be overwhelming as well. But like you, Nate, and the original Meditations on the Tarot Gang, Michael Martin as well.
Oh yeah, that would be fun too. I mean, I don't have much to say about eurythmy, but
Mhm.
I
I'm
can
thinking
listen.
that things to contribute though, like
Yeah, I just kind of throw in my 2 cents every now and then.
yeah, yeah, maybe I'll hit him up.
Do it. I'd love to, and Nate would too, and so yeah, and Michael.
Cool.
Michael's he's pretty easygoing,
Yeah, yeah,
generous.
and Waldorf was like I guess Eurythmy was, I don't know if you'd go so far as to say like a cornerstone or a keystone of, it was like even Waldorf schools today, I guess it's still one of the things that a lot of, almost if not all of them, would have, right? And so yeah, I bet Michael would know a lot about it. I bet you're
He would know a lot about it. Yeah, yeah. I'm really limited in what I know about anthroposophy. Um, I've read a number of Rudolf Steiner's things, but he's written so much. Like there's so much information out there that he wrote. It's crazy. So yeah. But it's funny because I always want to go back to the source. The source of Rudolf Steiner's thought is Goethe.
Mhm.
And so, and this is just probably some kind of obsessive compulsive disorder on my part. It's like when I was learning how to spin, I wasn't satisfied with buying wool from a, retailer to spin. I had to buy my own sheep so I could do it from the ground up. And that's kind of what I want to do with Steiner. I want to read Goethe, which then makes the chances that I'll ever finish reading either one of them really slim. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I know. I definitely think that's I don't know a whole lot about Goethe, but I definitely know that he was very influenced by him, and like he would always
Yeah.
kind of credit him with a lot of his thinking. Although at the same time, I would say like, I don't think all of the stuff that Steiner said has its root
No,
in.
no, it doesn't all have its root there, but he kind of had like from what I've read, he had like a little bit of an awakening when he was because he translated all of Goethe's work, I think, into more accessible German, kind of a modern German,
Gotcha, gotcha.
you know.
Yeah.
And it was during that time that he came up with, you know, all his thoughts.
Yeah.
And I mean, no, I don't know about all of them, but he just had this kind of change of, you know, evolution of consciousness while he was reading Goethe. And then he developed anthroposophy from there.
Think about like the particular, like what is the particular kind of thread that he carried through in that respect? Like, or like what about Goethe? Goethe is
Goethe. Well, this is where my lack of knowledge really, you know, shows up. But what I could say, which is very little, is that Goethe saw, the way I understand the way that he perceived the world was that things were not detached from themselves, from each other. Everything was, and this is why perhaps I've been thinking recently about procession, you know, how things proceed out of, you know, and then Jed, in the conversation we had, he talked about it in terms of dependent arising, which is emergence, right? And I think they're all the same thing. I think that they're all describing the same thing in the sense that nothing just appears, doesn't just pop on the scene and all of a sudden, oh, look, there's a dandelion. No, you know, the dandelion was a root, and then it was some leaves, and then it was a flower, you know, and it came from a seed. And if it wasn't for the nutrients in the soil and the rain and the sun, you know,
it reminds me of
so
yeah, it reminds me of like process philosophy or process theology kind of.
yeah, which I'm also not familiar with really, but um so, and I'm just really spitballing here because I don't know Goethe that well, but I do know his poem, The Metamorphosis of Plants, right? And he, by observing the plant itself, he realizes that the leaf becomes the flower. And then this is like 50 years later, scientifically proven by a botanist who had the decency to credit it to Goethe. But Goethe didn't make that discovery as a scientist. He made that discovery as a poet,
Wow.
right? And so for me, the connection there is poetic relations and the incarnational aspect of creation, right? And so if you look at something as a being, a whole being, right, that has its, you know, that lives and moves in God, right? Then you give it what? Some kind of ability.
Oh, I missed that last half of that sentence there. It's
You
getting
give it some kind of nobility, right? Like, you know, it's not just a thing, it's not an object, it's not objectified. You're not looking at it as detached from everything else, but you're seeing it as an integral part of a whole thing, right? A really important part of a whole process. That's how Goethe saw the world. That's why I dived into his theory of colors briefly. I never read his work directly, but I watched and read some other people's work on it. And that's how his theory of color differentiates itself from who's the other guy? Newton? No, not Newton. Is it Newton? Who saw the color through the prism? I don't know who it was. I think it was Newton. But he argued with him on that because Goethe saw the colors as deriving from each other, where the other person thought that they were just individual. I think this is how it is. I could be wrong. Singular colors. Purple is purple, you know, green is green. But he saw them as variations of each other.
Spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know much about Goethe either. That seems like it seems like you know more than I. And that and I have
Well, I don't know any.
the story of the leaf that was helpful because I remember you talking about that. And I do think that
Okay,
you know,
here's a little short blip from the internet. Goethe held that yellow and blue were primary. Newton and Goethe took very different approaches in their study of color. For Newton, color theory was something to be scientifically derived from experimentation in a lab. And Goethe, on the other hand, took a more experiential and physiological approach. That's right. That's right. Now I remember. So Goethe actually believed that the light in your own eyes affected the color itself. And that's probably as much as I could say about it.
maybe we can, we might be able to find a little clip of Steiner saying something about Goethe. Goethe is spelled like that's the one that's like Goethe.
Yeah.
Do people
And
pronounce that differently as well? Because isn't there another like
well, in German, that's the pronunciation, Goethe. An OE in German is an O with two dots over it. But in English, you write OE. So it's O with two dots and or OE.
yeah,
And the O with two dots, the two dots are called an umlaut in German, and they give the O, instead of it being O, which it can be in German, O, it gives it a sound.
yeah,
English people have a hard time with it. They don't hear it properly, actually.
yeah. All right. Let's see if there's a little like short clip him talking about Goethe. It's all
And Goethe has a different color wheel too. And the color wheel from Goethe, I don't know. I'm not going to try to share a screen or anything, but whoops. Can you see? Can you see that?
Mm.
That's Goethe's color wheel. You
Hmm.
can see how the different colors morph into each other, right? And those are the colors, whoops, those are the colors that anthroposophy uses in
Hmm.
all of their stuff. Oops.
Ah,
There we go.
interesting.
So all these colors you'll find in Waldorf, whatever.
Yeah, when you said that, I was kind of reminded of the eurythmy garments, um,
Yeah.
that they do in the performative eurythmy.
Yeah. And they also have in Switzerland, they have a building because I think their headquarters are there, called the Goethe Annum.
Yes, I never
It's
made that connection that it's connected to Goethe.
it's yeah, totally connect. That's why I'm telling you, like
Hmm.
that's where Steiner had
Yeah,
his spiritual
yeah,
awakening.
no, yeah, I think that's a good shout, to say that he was really adamant about being influenced and kind of affected by him. I don't think all that stuff is really long. There, Rudolf Steiner good to check um under 4 minutes. Let's see.
I'm going to be in Switzerland in 3 weeks. I
Oh,
should go there. I'm just looking at it now on Wikipedia. I'm like,
yeah.
I know I could go there actually. Oh, I'd just love
What
to.
building. I really love, I almost studied architecture. I was like considering going to college for that. And because I really think architecture is like super important and interesting and can be so beautiful. And I really like what he did there, like the
It's
idea.
open 7 days a week.
Wow,
Offers tours several times daily.
man. I support it if you're able to, because I've seen pictures and I love how it's, not um
There's no right angles in any
no
of
right
the.
angles. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. And it's like not straight, squared
Okay,
off.
Okay, look.
Yeah, and it's so colorful. That's the second thing I
Those
was.
are all Betch's colors.
Yeah.
They're all his colors from his color wheel.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, no, that's an interesting connection. Yeah. And I love how he went big with the colors, like he wasn't like nowadays, um, the only time we see rainbows is for the damn pride parades. It's like yeah. I
Rainbows. I thought you said Rambos. I'm like Rambos and pride parades.
I don't
Hmm.
know. Rainbows. I wish,
Rambos.
and that's another thing about Europe, is that all the architecture is at least somewhat more colorful usually. It's like
Mm.
I love that. The whole idea of like painting the buildings with all these fancy colors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm really now I'm interested in going. My youngest daughter did a practicum at a in Switzerland and Germany they don't call them Waldorf, they call them Steiner schools.
Hmm.
And but she did a practicum at a Steiner had a friend, a female friend. I can't remember her name at the moment, but she developed a company called Veleda, which is WELEDA. And, they make all kinds of, I don't know, oils and creams and toothpaste and, you know, from homeopathic
Oh, cool. Yeah.
things that she developed, like recipes of her own. And this was in the turn of the century. And she lived on a big, huge estate. And, I'm going to look it up quick because, the internet is fast, right? And my daughter did a practicum there because now that whole estate is it's a Steiner or an anthroposophical home for handicapped people.
Hmm.
And they have riding therapy for their clients. And my daughter did a practicum with the riding therapist, so she was an
Writing
assistant.
therapist.
Hmm?
Who's a writing therapist?
What is a riding therapist?
Yeah.
Well, so they take my daughter told me a few stories. Like she said, there was one young girl who lived at the home, like it's a home, right, where people who are handicapped physically and mentally live. And I think it's called Sonnenhof, actually. And there was a young girl who was she had, what do you call that? Cerebral palsy, really bad, and she was always like cramped up like this. She couldn't stretch her body out. And they would bring her to the horses, like with her wheelchair. And as soon as her body touched the horse's body, she could literally stretch out her arms and pet it like a normal person
Wow.
everywhere. And if she wasn't near the horse, she couldn't do that. She was like this,
Wow.
just tucked up, tight.
Saying to me, like, what do
Um,
you think? Would you mind, like, what do you perhaps wax a bit about this? Like, what do you think? I don't know. Do you have any like thoughts about that phenomena? That's so interesting to me because, um, connecting it, you were talking about this therapy, like, Steiner had eurythmy therapy,
mhm.
um, and uh, that's what comes to mind for me. That like perhaps there's a way of like this is kind of what I was trying to hint at a little bit with this idea of nonverbal exorcism. I'm not sure if you saw that video that I made. I
I
mean,
didn't watch it, but I want to.
okay, yeah, it's a little clip. It's a highly edited clip of our conversation, and where if somebody is like a horse in a way, then like they might encounter people and just alleviate them of their issues, like kind of
I
naturally.
I honestly I don't know because I don't know much about eurythmy, or that whole thing. I just know what my daughter told me. Once she would unfold at the closeness of the horse's body, they were able to then put her in the saddle, and she had some things to anchor her into the saddle properly so she didn't slip off. And then they would wander, like just walk with her around, the area. And the purpose of that, but the reason that it was so important for this young lady was because her whole body would be open and relaxed when she was in contact with the horse's body.
Yeah. It's so
And so it was like better than swimming. It was better than anything because she could move,
yeah.
and a lot of times people who have these spastic tendencies, they have to be moved, otherwise their muscles atrophy, right? So that was the whole point of the therapy, was for her body to have motion, up and down motion from being on the horse and holding on and, moving. So the name of the place is called Sonnenhof, and it's in a town in Switzerland called Arlesheim, Arles. And the person, it used to belong to Rita or Ita Wegman, who was friends with Rudolf Steiner. So if
Cool.
anybody wants to look it up, it's Sonnenhof in Arlesheim.
Cool. So that's and so like that place, and that's the place that your daughter was
Did
like
a practicum there
Mm.
with the riding with horses, because she loves horses. She grew up with horses. And but she didn't, she could have gone on to do an education and become a riding therapist, for example, but she didn't want to do that, so she didn't continue with it.
That's that.
But
So is that, and that's you said that that's different than the Steiner school because that's through Steiner's friend, but like how kind of influence, because I can't help but think about whether or not like uh I don't know, Steiner kind of influenced this
well,
idea of rider therapy has maybe been around or something.
all of the therapies, all of the food, all of the architecture, all of the colors, everything in Sonnenhof is anthroposophic.
Hmm.
So it's an anthroposophic home for handicapped children and adults.
Hmm.
And there are a number of these places in Switzerland, like in the town that my husband grew up in the village where he grew up. There's an anthroposophic old folks home.
Hmm.
So, if you got to pay, but if you decide you want to go there, for whatever reasons, it's a care home, but it's also just a living, they have all of that available.
Yeah, no.
You
That,
can go be there instead of in some state-run facility,
yeah.
or whatever, or commercial facility for old folks, if you have the money. I mean, it's expensive, right? But it's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. It's yeah, it's just gorgeous.
Cool.
Gorgeous. And
To hear
yeah.
that your daughter was doing that.
Huh?
It's cool to hear that your daughter was doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, honestly, that idea of the horse like being so that's just such a wild thing,
Mhm.
that story that
Mhm.
you told. And it's so interesting to me. And also
Well,
connecting.
I think I've mentioned to you that horses they have a real,
Yeah,
they have a really interesting spirit about them, because in what's the movie Avatar, the
yeah,
horse-like creatures where they can plug in.
yep.
That is so true, right? But we actually don't, like I'm not pulling one
Yeah,
of
yeah.
these things here.
Yeah.
But you
So
can't.
I think the plugging in is like the effective language. It's the effective, efficient.
Touching consciousnesses.
Yeah, and yeah, and but I'm saying for us, we don't have the the wiggly worm wires. We have
We have actual.
words. Yeah, and like we have gestures and so and like when those
Yep,
become
that's right. And
neat.
that's the eurythmy, right? That's the eurythmy,
Yeah.
the body language, right?
About like the horse and like because with the horse it's all about the body language, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like and um and connecting it to the therapy and then to the education, like about how he saw this as like an important educative process or something. Uh, yeah, it's just super. Yeah, that's just all very interesting. Like it's super
Well,
silly.
see, if you believe that everything is connected, then there is no reason why the human being and the horse cannot connect. And in the case of this young woman who had cerebral palsy, she literally physically connected when she was near the horse. And Amelia said to me, it was just bizarre how you would take her away from the horse and she'd go right back into her position in her
And
chair.
I imagine, like, so let's think about this. Like, there's one idea is like the mimesis, kind of, or like mimicry, kind of the natural mirroring that maybe happens or something. And then like another idea would be like the actually feeling, like touching it and like almost like dancing with it, like co-moving, you know? And then,
Horses love, I mean, if the horse is treated well and respects human beings and is socially engageable, a lot of horses have been treated badly, and so they're just not going to like it. But um, a lot of horses, I mean, horses generally speaking, love to be touched. So
yeah.
horses have, like, amongst themselves, they have grooming techniques because they need each other to groom properly.
Mhm.
So one horse will, like, they'll stand head to tail. So this is the head, right? So they're head to tail. And one horse will nibble on the other horse, and then that horse will reciprocate on. So
Really?
they will groom each other, and they can show each other on each other's bodies where they want to be scratched. So, right, or they want to be groomed. So, sometimes it's along the neck, sometimes it's at the head of the tail, sometimes it's down on the leg,
Mhm.
or along the side, and they map each other that way. So they're very, even amongst themselves, they're very in tune with touching and bodies, and then they also have a hierarchy, a herd hierarchy, and everything is determined by where their feet are. So this is what natural horsemanship is all about, is you keep an eye on your horse's feet, because if the horse comes towards you without your request, then that's in defiance of your authority,
Mm.
because that's what horses do to each other, right? So there's always a lead mare, and that lead mare has to contend with other horses that want that position 24/7, okay? And her job is to give them one stink eye,
Yeah.
or one ear down, or one flick of her tail to
Mhm.
tell them to put that foot back.
Mm.
Because the foot forward means, and if she doesn't say anything, then they'll push in, right? And so this is what I mean when I say animals say, they say what they mean, and they mean what they say. So there's always, the mind body connection is always tight. It's very tight, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're working with horses, you can't let anything just slip, because they're always saying what they mean and meaning it.
I've heard isn't it like so much that like they hold on to things, right? Like you have to go back and like give them a pat or something like
Yeah,
because
I mentioned that once. Like, if you have to be, so there's this one 3-second rule. If a horse tries to hurt you, you can murder it for 3 seconds. So you have to, he says it that way because you have to actually think that way. You have to think, I'm now going to kill you, right?
so like to set the message.
Because you have to mean what you say.
Ah,
Okay. Oh, I really want to kill you right now. The horse is like, whatever, right?
Yeah.
You really have to mean it. But you can only do it for 3 seconds because that's actually how a horse is. Like a horse will not, they'll avoid being killed. So they'll have, some kind of a conflict, but the other one runs off very quickly. One of them runs off quickly.
Mhm.
So yeah,
It's so interesting to me, because
really
the
fast.
the idea of like the horses being like super mind body connected or
Mhm.
something, right? And then that having this, so I was saying like, you have the mimicry maybe, or the actual contact, like feeling with, and then
Mhm.
some people I imagine would say something about like fields, like, oh, when she gets close to the horse's electrical field, then I don't know. I
Well, my
imagine.
daughter actually said there had to be physical contact.
uh,
So they
that's
would
what.
lift her hand, they would lift her hand up and they would put it on the horse. And as soon as she made physical contact, she could stretch on her own and she could move her hand like a normal person and she could pet the horse all over.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing I was wondering by kind
It's
of.
like magic.
Yeah, and I imagine there is like something to be said for the electrical aspect, but yeah,
Probably.
my that idea of like, so I don't know, what do you think it is, like the feeling of the resonance of like
I don't know.
you know be, because I'm also thinking about like that I think this can happen with people, where like when somebody is just vibing well and like being mind body connected, that it has this transformative effect on the people around them, and like
Yeah.
not in like a manipulative way. It's just
No,
like
no.
just how it works or something.
Yeah. No, it's just positive energy.
Yeah,
I
but the
don't think there's anything negative to it, actually.
concept is interesting, right? I, in that particular case, like it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's a yeah,
It has a healing effect,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And yeah, this is now just reminding me of when the woman touched the hem of Christ's garment and he felt power flow out of him. And he said, "Who touched me?"
That's what that was, eh? I'm not familiar with the verse.
Oh, let me look it up. No, I'll show it to you here.
Hmm.
um, okay, let's go Bible Hub.
Grab some water real quick.
Hmm?
Mind if I grab some water?
No. God. Um, excuse me. Okay, there's 3 different versions of this, and so I'm trying to find the one that has that included in it. Um, yeah, here in Luke 8, Jesus went with him. The crowds pressed around him, including a woman who had suffered from bleeding for 12 years. She spent all her money on physicians, but no one was able to heal her. She came up behind Jesus and touched the fringe of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus said. But they all denied it. "Master," Peter said, "the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus declared, "Someone touched me, for I know that power has gone out from me." And then the woman, seeing that she could not escape notice, came trembling and fell down before him. In the presence of all the people, she explained why she had touched him and how she had immediately been healed. "Daughter," said Jesus, "your faith has healed you. Go in peace." So there's a healing touch, right? I mean, he touches everyone that he heals too. And then
Beautiful.
there's all the, there's all that science about all these orphans in Eastern Europe that were just, not touched. I had a friend actually who adopted one of these kids when she thought she was getting a 2-year-old, but she got a 4-year-old, but she acted like a 2-year-old. She was still drinking a bottle. She was still wearing diapers. She was completely mentally and physically behind because they were never held and never touched.
Yeah. I think it's so important.
Hmm.
And I'm so glad that you made that connection. Like, yeah, because I think that's ultimately, perhaps, uh, maybe like where this thread kind of leads is to the idea of uh, performing miracles like Christ or something. And I know that's a touchy area, but he says, you shall do the things that I do, but greater, and it really is moving to me, because I've had experiences where kind of beyond my control, as I said at the beginning of before we started recording, like this was very unsettling to me when I first kind of picked up on this subtle dynamic that people participate in, or however the heck we want to phrase it.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I would have sometimes these encounters with people that just like they would totally bloom or transform, or not always in a good way, also, but like
Hmm.
just right in front of me,
Reveal or unveil or something.
and like you know what comes to mind for me is like less, of course, like the physical things, but also just like the experiences that I've had at least are more so like this mode of thinking for people, like kind of like the cerebral palsy, but like with just in their just their natural being, like people are tied up,
Hmm. Yeah, very much.
and then like I don't know, right? So something about that really speaks to me, and I'm glad. I really should read the Bible, um, like all the way through and such. Um,
Just read the Gospels. Just do that for yourself, like
crazy. I've
Matthew,
never
Mark,
heard.
Luke, John.
It
And they're
literally,
actually really fun to read.
yeah,
Like,
I've,
yeah.
I've literally never heard that story, as far as I'm aware. Um, which is kind of crazy. Um, yeah, because that really resonates with me. And yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, should we be out here exercising? Of course, there gets into the questions of like, what does it take to have, I think really what does this is the true authority. Like, because something about living in the kingdom is true authority, and something about living in the kingdom is for me connected with that uh participatory mode of being where the mind and body are connected,
Mhm.
marriage.
Yeah, which is an alignment. I mean, I don't think that the mind and body can be connected unless you actually align or orient yourself to God. So here's another horse thing. There's a thing called guided riding, okay? And you can literally sit on your horse and look in a direction and the horse will go there. Like you can ride the horse with no saddle, no reins, nothing.
And the horse can't see you.
No. Well, the horse has a little bit of a peripheral to you, but not much actually, because you're tight to its body, but they have a very wide range of vision, but it's not based on that. It's based on your body movement. So, and when you're doing it, you have to imagine that you are like a marionette and you have a string at the top of your head and you pull up on that string and all your limbs drop in this straight line of gravity, right? So you drop you seat yourself in on the horse, completely aligned with your center of gravity, and its center of gravity are the same. Okay. And then from that end, you're also very relaxed. All your limbs are very relaxed. And from that position, so you can't be like this doing it,
Hmm.
right? Because the horse can't feel your body.
Hmm.
Your body is actually only how do I put this? Your body is only really working in harmony when you're in that aligned, physically aligned position.
You know, something, and you said when you're oriented to God, and then you went right to the horse, and that is super. I kind of blew my mind a little bit because where my mind goes here is to um, Sagittarius, which is kind of a far out connection.
Cool.
This is a little bit of a
Yeah, I
stretch.
like it. It's
'Cause
good.
Sagittarius is aiming
Mhm.
with the bow, which is like aiming at God. And I know that this is kind of not everybody's going to follow along for this part of it, but in Galahad's Cosmogram, the at the top is uh on the left you have you can read a zodiac wheel onto it where you have the birth of Christ on the left in Pisces, um and then I guess would be judgment, like the scales of Christ on the other side. But there's other things as well, like Leo, the lion is down near where Leo would be, Aquarius is up where the cups are, and where Sagittarius would be is where the shining void is at the top, pointing up. So it's like pointing at God or something.
Mhm.
At least in my mind, that's kind of how I have been.
Well, here's the theory. Here's what I think of in connection to that.
Sure.
That sin is missing the
Yes,
mark.
precisely. Yeah, and so when we're talking about precisely, that's exactly what I'm thinking. And like so,
Yeah.
and when we and like and it's kind of like that's where we get our identity as well, and like where we aim, it contextualizes everything that we do.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
and so like
So if you're on the horse,
you're aiming
do
at God. Oh yeah, please go.
yeah. So I mean, okay. So this is about aiming too, right? Because now when you're learning guided riding, they say wherever you want to go, look at that thing. That's all you have to do. And so you're in an arena and you look at a post in the arena and the horse will ride right to the post
That's pretty wild.
and stop in front of it. And you're just like, and I've done this with people, with my horses in the riding arena here, I'm like, okay, now where do you want to go? And they'll say, well, I want to go over, and they're flinging their arms around, the horse is just standing there, right? And I'm like, okay, put your arms down. Now you're a little marionette, drop your limbs. Now look at the post. And they'll go, and the
Oh,
horse will right to it.
yeah, it's so wild. I really think that there's like more going on. You know what I mean?
Tons of things are going on.
Like, but okay, yeah. So yeah, this aiming at God perhaps contextualizes your behavior or something, or your being, such that you have this, you're living in the kingdom when the mind and body are connected.
Mhm.
And this is what gives you the authority that is what either moves the horse, or thinking of what the horse thing. It's kind of this weird reciprocal thing that's emerging.
Okay, so I watched this, just coming
One,
to my
wait, just
story
one
to
more thing.
you go.
Sorry. That so when that authority, that's what either directing the horse, but also with the girl with cerebral palsy, is that um this resonance with the ground of being that happens when we connect the mind and body or something like that. I'm kind of throwing in a lot of words here, but that authority is what I think creates this resonance automatically or something, and connecting it back to the idea of us doing healing or miracles or something.
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
want to take that, yeah, but let's talk about, let's ask the question, what is authority in this sense, right?
Sure.
Because it's not necessarily what we think it is.
Yes.
So I mentioned earlier Martin Shaw saying we make things holy by the kind of attention we give to them, right? So I was recently watching McGilchrist talk, and it was a talk to medical professionals, and he was talking about the medical system and the way doctors should be, right, and the way they are today compared to the way they were before. It's really good. Lots of touching going on in his version of medicine. Lots of touching, lots of intuition, which is all missing from today, right? And he said, attention has the nature of love. And love is pure attention to another, right? So this is what's happening when you're aligned on the horse, when your body is aligned, your center of gravity is the same center of gravity as the horse's, right? So you have this natural pull straight through the bodies of two beings. It's like a separate entity, right? Gravity. It's a force that's connecting them together. And then your attention becomes the horse's attention.
Yeah.
It pays attention, like you're almost becoming the same thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's really
One thing.
yeah, and it's like almost something about
But it's all done in love. Like, because there's no coercion. You have no reins, you have no saddle, you have no spurs, you're not kicking,
yeah. No,
you know.
I've experienced that with people too, like where you can kind of extend if you're able to extend the boundaries of the ego beyond just yourself or something, where you say we are one, ultimately like it kind of creates that same similar resonance at least. It's interesting. But I really kind of want to double click on this thing. I see what you're saying when I was talking about authority, it can be like kind of um
Misconstrued.
yeah, and especially if in the example of like directing the horse, but I was really more so thinking about like the authority that the horse has over the girl with the cerebral palsy to suddenly relieve her of this, like and um
But okay, so here's the thing with animals. I think, well, I don't know if I know the answer, but I just know that they love easily. Like that's their go-to thing, right? Unless they've been abused and that love has been abused, that's essentially what abuse is. It abuses one creature's love for another, right? If that's never happened to them and they have no reason to mistrust you, they love. And the one thing that's noteworthy about horses is they're actually made to work. Like they love to work. I have a big draft horse out here, and we don't, my husband and I are just at that age where we don't do much with our horses anymore. And my daughter came, and her husband it was the winter, so they couldn't go riding, but they just took Merlin for walks and took turns sitting on his back and, got him to do stuff, asked him to do things. And Amelia came to me afterwards. She's like, Mom, Merlin really wants to work. You need to do something with him, because it makes him feel valued, right? So when you give them the opportunity to work with you and the nature of the horse, like my sister's always said, they're special in the kingdom of heaven because Jesus is coming back on them, on one, right?
yeah, and we literally
So
have in our kingdom of heaven the the Sagittarius, right? At least that's one way.
he's on a horse, right?
It's the centaur.
A
Yes,
centaur.
I guess
Car horse. Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I think
Wow.
some people would say they would be the rider on the horse as opposed to the centaur, but I'm not sure. Um,
But either way, it's really fascinating.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's my definitely my favorite sign. It's on
Is that yours?
objectively best sign. Um,
My husband is Sagittarius.
my sun sign is Cancer, but my rising sign, which is like what's on the horizon when you're born, Sagittarius. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah, yeah. It is interesting to me the yes, the horse, like the metaphysical significance of the horse. You also have this in like a Eastern idea, like the horse energy or something like and of like the horse being a symbol of that's what I mean to say is that the horse is like a symbol of this power or something, some
Yeah.
virulence or something, but
Yeah, you should think about it more, Jonathan. I'd love to. It's obviously really tickled your fancy, and um, yeah, I think that if you thought about it some more, you might have some interesting things to share. I think it would be good.
Well, I'm kind of curious about I do kind of want to hear your response about what do you think about this idea of you know um doing miracles like Christ, because as you saw, I see a bunch of nuance into how this is done and like the way in which this happens and what it means to have true authority, which I don't have it all figured out in that respect, but I sense that it's not, it's definitely not, might makes right. It's like to be one with God is true authority. So like, I don't know, because I think that kind of gets swept under the rug,
Yeah, okay. I have
this,
thoughts. I definitely have thoughts because I had one experience in India where a local woman came. She had a very sick baby, fevered, just not good. Didn't look good at all. Looked like it had been sick for some time.
is this the one where you lay
I
hands?
didn't touch it. I didn't touch it.
One where you
So
simply didn't.
I didn't, yeah. But I asked God what I should do because YWAM had been staying at that house several years in a row. And the local people had learned that the people from YWAM have special healing powers. And all they need to do is touch their children and their children will be healed. Now, all of that was attributed to the white person who came from America, not to God. Okay? It wasn't seen as Jesus healed the child.
YWAM is Young Women's Group.
Youth with a mission.
Okay.
Youth with a mission. And so she came to the house and she wanted to see me and she wanted me to put my hands on the baby and heal it. That for her, that's how you do it, right?
Yeah, I've
The
heard you.
white person from so and so comes here and they touch my baby and it's healed. And so when I heard that, I remember having a feeling like stopping short, like, and so I said, asked her if she could come back in an hour, and I prayed. And I'm like, what do you want me to do here, God? Because it's not me that's doing this, and she doesn't know that. She was Hindu, right?
Hmm.
And then he said, tell her that I'm jealous and I want her for myself.
Yes, I've heard you say this, but I'm so glad that you're telling it.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I will. And he said, and don't touch her baby. And, and I said, okay. So she came back and, all she could think of was, I'm going to touch her baby. And I sat her down. I had a translator with me. And I said to her, listen, I just, I want to tell you that God, God is jealous. He doesn't want to share you with all your gods. He wants you for himself. And she said, oh, I can't, because if I stop going to the temple, then my husband will lose his job. My baby will die. Just bad things will happen, right? And she said, the demons will kill my baby. The demons will make sure that my husband, because when you go into Hindu temples, there's like demons everywhere, like they're depicted, right? And I said to her,
You don't
I
have
said,
that in the West. We don't have any icons of demons in our churches here in the West.
no.
Interesting observation.
So I said to her, I said, well, I said, that's totally understandable. But I said, I'm not asking you to stop going to temple, but God wants me to tell you that he loves you and he's jealous and he wants you for himself. That's all he said to me that he wanted. And then she said, are you gonna put your hands on my baby? And I said, no, but I'm going to pray for your baby. And God is going to heal your baby because I know that he loves you. And it's him that does this, not me. So I prayed for her baby. And she came back 2 days later with the baby and she wanted to tell me that, and she was amazed. Okay. So now her experience was she didn't touch my baby. Something else healed my baby. Right. And that something else loves me and wants me for his own, you know? And so there's that. And then there was something else that came to my mind. What was it?
Very interesting.
What were you talking about?
We're talking
Oh, if we can heal. Oh, okay. Here, now I remember. So this morning, Nathan Woods came on to the live stream, and he told the story of how I match made him and his wife.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
met my wife through the Discord server.
little spoiler
And
for the head. That's little spoiler. I'm planning to use that as the final closing of the clip probably, because I think that's what it looks like when we crown the digital with the in-person. You know, it's like, and ultimately it points towards true communion. You know, yeah.
right. And he shared this with me after they got married, actually. He said, Shari, there's something I didn't tell you. And I said, okay, what was it? And he said, well, and I don't know if you should share this because he didn't share it. So I'll just tell you, okay? Maybe don't make this part public. But he said, so the way I tell the story is, and I still to this day remember exactly where I was in the house and what I was doing. I was vacuuming upstairs in this part of my living room on the wooden floor. And I heard this voice that said, when are you going to tell Shelley what you're noticing about Nathan? And
Like,
I just,
I heard a voice. Was it actually audible? Because that's
no, it was just in my head. But
I
it was
wouldn't judge it if it was. I'm just curious.
no, it wasn't audible. No. And I was like, are you kidding me? There's no way in hell, because I had noticed that Nathan was exhibiting some kind of attention towards Shelley that I thought was unusual for who he was, okay? And Shelley and I had been in long, like months-long conversations about personal difficulties she'd been having about her singleness, right? And I just was like, there's no way in hell I'm matchmaking people I don't even know. Like these people, they could be serial killers for all I know. Like, I don't know. So I just said no. And it was like, okay, that was the voice. All right, I'll be back, kind of thing, you know? And so then every day for a week. So when are you going to tell Shelley what you noticed about Nathan? It was always the same question. And finally I said, okay, fine, because it was so annoying. And then I was talking to Shelley one day and I said, have you ever talked to Nathan? She said, no, never talked to Nathan Woods. And I said, you should talk to him once. Really? Should I? I said, yeah, you should. That's all I said. Nice. I didn't actually say, right? And then, so then Nathan tells me, because I told them that story. I said, look, because they were like, oh, Shari, this is amazing. You know, thanks for doing this. I said, I never did it. Like, if it was up to me, I wouldn't have done this. But there was this voice that wouldn't leave me alone. Nathan said, the day that I started hearing that voice, he went on a little bit of a pilgrimage to an icon of a saint and prayed for a wife. And it was a female saint. Okay? I can't remember her name. I'd have to ask him. And when he told me that, I felt like a lightning bolt through my whole body. And he knew exactly what he was saying to me. And I said, you mean she was telling me to tell Shelley? It was her voice. And he said, yes, it was. And I was just like, oh my God. I almost like, it freaked me out. So here's what I'm saying with both of those stories. And it applies to the one that I just read out of St. Luke. You have to listen. Right?
Yes. Yes.
And when you listen and you do what God asks you to do, as crazy as it might be, which it always is when you don't know what you're doing.
As much backlash as it might amount to?
Well, you just don't even know what it is. Like, match make two strangers on the internet. I actually said, fuck that.
Mhm.
That was my response.
Yeah.
I am not doing that. Because it was such a strong voice that I knew that it wasn't going to leave me alone. And I tried to be just as adamant in return. Right. And so if you don't listen, you aren't oriented, you aren't aligned to God. You just aren't.
Yeah, let's bring in again that the terminology of the ground of being, right? And then talking about God being the ground of being, and then thinking about the connections with that in silence, in listening. Beautiful. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so and oh my gosh, so yeah, I don't know. So
Yeah.
um
And
yeah,
that's just been, that's always been my experience. Like people would say to me, "Oh, Shari, tell me about your prayer life. How do you pray? What prayers do you say? All this thing." I'm like, I don't have one. I literally don't. Like if someone asks me to pray for them, I envision myself holding them up
mm,
because I don't have anything to say to God. That's how I feel. I'm like, they need help, Lord, and I'm here to help them get help. You know, all I can do is carry them, right? Here they are. I just want to bring them to your attention. And I don't ask that his will be done because even that for me will cloud my own, like somehow my will gets intermingled in there. Like when I say, your will be done, I'm like, could you heal them at the same time? It's all like wrapped up in there, or don't let them die, or, save their marriage or whatever it is, right? I don't even say those things on purpose because I don't know what God wants to do for them. But I can carry them and I can hold them up and draw attention to them,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, so maybe like maybe can I, in terms of whether it be exorcism or healing or anything, maybe it's not, maybe we should be thinking not that this is stuff we should be doing, but just stuff that
Exactly.
this is stuff that, and yeah, this is stuff that just happens, right? Like,
If you're listening,
yeah, if you're listening,
if you're listening.
yeah. So,
Like I've always had this thought, Jonathan, that I've always asked the question, how many women did God ask if they were willing to receive the Christ
mm,
before somebody said yes?
mm,
How many women did he knock on the door of their hearts and they never heard the knock, right? How many? Because I can guarantee you, if God is if he leaves the 99 to find the one who is lost, he would never stop asking, right? He
mm,
would never stop looking for that way in
yeah,
to humanity. And so, and it, like, I don't know the answer, but
yeah,
I can only assume that it would have been millions and millions of people that he would have been, and they didn't hear anything until Mary,
mm,
which is why she is to be magnified, which is why she is blessed among women, right? And that's where the thought came from, because, that's what the angel says to her.
mm. Yeah, my left brainism says maybe there's that I feel like maybe it was not anyone else because of like historical, like everything was situated perfectly type of thing. However, I think that there's a metaphysical truth in what you're saying, that like God is always uh pouring his word into everything, and like it's a matter
Yeah.
of our ability to hear it and to allow Christ to be born within us. As you speak about so beautifully, in my opinion, like this create this virginal space that allows the spirit to enter. Yeah.
I was just looking to see if I had that. I don't. But there's a really great Meister Eckhart quote here. Whoops.
It's so moving to me. I love this conversation so much. Like, yeah. I don't know. I'm just getting out a bit.
Anyway, I can't find it, but there's just such a beautiful quote of, oh, maybe it's here. No. Nope. Yeah. It's
Oh,
just about God giving birth on the green couch. I
yeah,
mean, God is a green God and he's laying on the birthing couch, and he's giving birth.
Yeah.
Meister Eckhart has in his book of secrets, he's got all these little verses that he writes in there. And one of them is about God being a green God and laying on a birthing couch and giving birth just constantly. And, I just find that so interesting because maybe I'm just a really slow learner. But at one point I remember realizing, wait a minute, Christ is born of a virgin and Christ needs to be born in me. So wherever he's born in me has to be a virginal space. And if that's true, then, and I think it is, because that is the nature of God. And so, yeah, it happened at the right time, just as everything happens at the right time. But the question is always being asked, I think.
Yeah.
Even though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Regardless, I'm just being a little.
No, I think it's a good observation what you made there, right? Because I think these two things can live together, is what I'm saying, right? The fact that it happened when it happened, and the fact that it had the potential to happen all throughout linear time, I think both of those things are true.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to be in that co-creative listening mode. And you know what? When we bring healing into the world. That's the outcome. Yeah. It's a reconciliation. That's the job. That's the thing God's doing, right?
Yeah. And yes, and I think, I made the distinction of not something we do, but something that happens. And that's kind of the way I've thought about it before as well. But and but particularly this thing about the fact I'm trying to stress that in the sense that or I think there's something to be gleaned from this, and that like I don't know exactly what I'm saying here, but something about the happening of that is a phenomenological happening that is ever present or something or that
Always happening.
yeah.
Always happening.
And I feel like you can get a semblance for it, you can a touchstone or a taste of or you can line up with the thread such that you can see that, or it gets the door can be opened slightly or something. And I don't know, I don't know where exactly to say, but it's just that I feel that this is at hand in a sense, and
Yeah.
um yeah, that I don't know what it is, but something about the fact that it's a feeling as well. It's something I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying here. This is the furthest I've gotten with
Yeah.
anybody in terms of actually understanding this. Uh I feel like you get what I'm saying.
I
So
do.
the um
Well, I think you're,
curious about what does that look like? When we're in that mode, because let's say a healing is happening through us, right? I'm thinking we need to start to dig into what does this look like? I don't know.
well, that's why I keep saying people, you need to know the storm you're in.
Like yeah. And in that when we're in that moment of how I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of maybe trying to wrap things up full circle is
Yeah.
it's kind of like a dance, but it's also kind of like we're making hand signs intentionally and connecting it. It's like the eurythmy, this
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
natural flowing that like
No,
it's a
I,
release. That's the word I've been looking for. I feel
what?
like it's a release, man. It's like we are released into this mode of
Mhm.
healing or of being connected with God or something. I don't know. It's just, yeah, what do you,
Yeah, yeah, unlocked. I mean, Jesus talks about us being captives, right? And being set free. And the freedom is in that alignment with God, right? But like if you wanted to tie it all into what we've been talking about, we talked about Goethe and the color wheel, and I had a thought, oh, where did it go now? It was about Goethe's delicate empiricism, which is what he called it, where you see all things connected. Oh, I know. I was going to talk about the nobility of the plant, of when he's looking at the plant and he's writing the poem about the metamorphosis of plants. He gives it nobility. He doesn't impose anything on it that he wishes it to be. And
oh,
it's only in that position that he actually can discover what it is.
yeah.
Okay? So and so that's what we have to do in the world. We have to and I just keep harping on the same things. George MacDonald says what you call it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and it
But
connects to
but then in that section I read to Jed, he says you don't know what you won't know who yourself is, until you, how did he put it? What is that section I read out of Lilith? It's probably still sitting right here. Let me see. Because it's just, I have to say it the way he says it. Yeah, it's right here. No one can say he is himself until first he knows that he is. That's all caps in the book. Okay. And then what himself is. So what he is not the same as himself. Okay. In fact, nobody is himself, and himself is nobody. So, it's like what he's pointing out here is exactly what Goethe's looking at, and what Rudolf Steiner is pointing at is it's seeing the thing for what it is, all caps. It's very ground of being, right?
Yeah.
And so that the only way you can do that in my articulation is by no longer imposing any of your ego onto it. Like, what do you want, what you wish for, what you think, or what you are rationalizing. All of that has to go away. You have to be in the cloud of complete unknowing. And I've described Goethe's metamorphosis of plants. I've described the process in which he found himself, because I could imagine it, where he just, and I prefer the language that I've used. I think it's pretty good, actually, is that he follows the boundaries and limitations of the thing itself. Right? So he's looking at a plant, and he's not trying to penetrate. He doesn't cut it off. He doesn't rip it open. He doesn't pin it to a board. He looks at it as a living being, and he follows the boundaries of it until he comes to the point where he realizes that the leaf becomes the flower.
Yeah.
That and it's a procession. It proceeds out of, right? And but you have to be willing to accept the boundaries and the limitations of things in order to see them that way. Right. And so like this is the story of Mr. Vane. He spells it Vane, like a weather vane.
Hmm.
But it's a play on words, right? Mr. Vane, you don't know who you are, and you don't know who himself is, right? Because you, in that state of being, all you want to do is impose what you think you know. You're not comfortable to not know anything. You have to, that's the position where the world becomes enchanted.
Yeah, and that's when we resonate with the world,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a friend of mine just sent me this the other day. It's a quote from George MacDonald. To cease to wonder is to fall plumb down from the childlike to the commonplace, the most undivine of all moods intellectual. Our nature can never be at home among things that are not wonderful to us.
Yeah.
Wonder, as in like wonder with an O.
Yeah.
That's how I think of it. Your eyes are like O's, right? It's not an A. It's not wondering. It's wonder.
Yeah.
And that's how Goethe saw the world. He wondered at it. He saw it as it is, right? And in so doing, he was able to actually make scientific discoveries. So,
Mhm.
and perhaps that's exactly what's happening to the girl with cerebral palsy when she comes to the horse. She takes it for what it is, right? And she's in its wonder that frees her from her own body, perhaps.
Perhaps. Yeah, I'm really thinking about like the authority of the horse though. That's what really resonates with me is this mind body, like them, like in
The
that.
authority that the horse exudes because its mind-body connection is so aligned. Yeah. And it passes that on to her.
Yeah,
That's really good.
thanks.
Mhm.
I do also see what you're saying there.
But
Yeah,
doesn't that also, like in my opinion, in my estimation, that mind-body connection that the animal feels is because it actually dwells in love. Like I think that animals know more than we do when it comes to these things. And they are aligned to God. And if God is love, that is where they reside. And
yeah,
so their authority is actually born out of a
um,
relationship of love.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's really. I think we hit all the. Those are all good. Um,
I guess we should go away. I should go make dinner, actually.
well, yeah, I could keep talking all night, of course, but yeah, I don't want to keep you uh here all night. And the
Quarter to 8. My husband's still out there cutting wood, and I'm having a wonderful conversation. But I need to make him some dinner.
oh,
Anyway,
okay,
I'll let you wrap up, though.
yeah, I'm kind of like at the. I don't know. I feel like we've gotten to that point where like the words become repetitive and like um something because we've gotten to the place where the pointers are pointing, um, and um, and that's kind of what I was saying about trying to double tap on like the phenomenological of like what does this actually look like? What does it look like for somebody to do the healing? And it's that like, and from what I heard is you were kind of pointing to this idea of um, listening, and it's when you get out of the way such that
Yeah.
you're not clouding things with your own narrative, right? Harmony comes to mind. Like I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's good.
Um,
It feels like harmony.
yeah. And I don't know, all that I can really think about at this moment is how this is like right here. right at this very moment, you know, like me and you are talking and we are listening to each other and like um this is kind of what blows my mind. It's just like this is I don't know, I've run out of words to be honest. It's just I virulently want to point people towards exactly kind of where this conversation has kind of
Focused in.
pressed to me. You know, it's this
It's focused in on attention, and the potential, like the whole listening thing
Yeah.
is about attention, really, like paying attention, right? And you can't pay attention if you're not aiming, like you said, right? Your attention in the right direction. So yeah, anyway, we're gonna go
this is the problem.
we're gonna circle around everything again.
Yeah, at some point the words like you just have to throw them away, honestly, I think, because
Yeah.
like yeah, like it just becomes jargon. Like
It does. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so the doing of the healing. This is all good. I think that's, you know, the healing happens and it's kind of like this the phenomenological thing when you're being and you're and what words did you say when you're like seeing the other person but you're not clouding it with your own
Imposing.
yeah, not imposing and like and
And
yeah,
I use that kind of same idea when we were talking about love without images with Mark Parker, you know, in that first live stream before, not when him and I and Nate had the conversation, but the live stream before that kind of prompted it. I was trying to get at the point that the place of love with no images is a place where there are no presuppositions about anything, right?
the pure flow of happening kind of like and that I'm so glad you said that 'cause I think that's wrapped it to the final point, which is you know, we're talking about this in the context of like healing cerebral palsy and stuff like that, but also, you know, I think what's really at the end of the day, it's kind of, I don't know, it's communion, right?
Yeah.
It's this is how people commune with each other.
Mhm.
And um so I think that when and you connected the place of no images, you were talking about romance, like sexual I guess you could really apply
Union.
any romantic kind of thing. But yeah, sexual union and um and this kind of wraps it all together in for me in terms of like the connection to uh the New Jerusalem or something like that, or the body of Christ, you know, like
Yeah.
the body of Christ.
The bride.
Yeah, and um I guess really is that I just want to point at the fact that like this uh contact which can happen between people, this communion that we've been speaking about this whole time, um I think that there's really like it can spike very extremely and like I think that crazy things can begin to happen like we have not even seen the beginning of stuff when two
Right.
people are really lined up. Yeah, and I think I'm kind of nervous a little bit because I feel we're so close to this thing,
Mhm.
this phenomena that I'm just kind of trepidation because as I told you earlier, like when I first kind of came upon this, it kind
Yeah.
of wreaked havoc on my life. And so like, but
Yeah.
that's what I want to say here at the end is that like the heights of union and communion and contact between people, I think can truly exceed our what we see.
Imagination. Imagination.
Yeah. I was gonna say that, but then I hesitated because I'm not sure if that's right.
Well,
Like,
I think it is because it's the small I imagination.
okay, yeah. And when I say I'm not sure if it's right, it's because I remember you said something about that just the other day, right? About like,
Well, for
you know,
George MacDonald, imagine when he speaks of imagination, it's always capital I, right? It's always divine. But we also have these petty imaginations, which he would have called fancy,
oh
you
yeah,
know, and And because we're, captives, I think of us as in shackles, captive. That's all of us is captive, right? All of us is in shackles, including our imagination. I have the brother I told you about who has schizoaffective disorder. He said to me once, "Do you know why we have flying dreams, Shari? Why people have flying dreams?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Because we're born to fly." I said, "Yeah, that's right."
Beautiful.
We know how it feels. We can actually feel it when we're dreaming it.
I think that's real. That might be a good place to stop. I think that's really beautiful.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Thanks, Jonathan.
I'm gonna stop the recording. Maybe talk for 1 minute.